Welcome everyone to the captive audience. We're starting a little bit late today. Had to get here actually from driving all the way from further down south in the state, and sure would love to give you an overview of what's in the news. I'm flying solo tonight, and I'm glad to be back because it's been a little while, and been busy out on the campaign trail. And I hope you guys enjoy this one. And by the way, just a little plug: tomorrow at 6:30, also in an adjusted time from our usual time, we'll have Representative Ed Deal, who is going to work together with me on putting out a little mini video voter guide on all of the upcoming uh, ballot measures, as well as some key issues in the news and some key races. We will also talk about the election integrity issues that Oregon and other states are facing with non-citizens getting registered and even voting. And so Oregon, Virginia, Arizona, to name a few, are dealing with this right now. And so we're going to talk about that too. Anyway, I hope you guys are doing well. And sorry I didn't give you a heads up as to the timing of this, but I hope you get to watch it on replay. Look, I've barely been able to keep up with the news myself. It seems like I am either on the phone constantly or in front of a computer doing work constantly or out knocking doors or talking to or preparing for the media down in the 4th District. So in the 4th Congressional District, why don't we start there? Because I can tell you all about that. Very recently, we, of course, we have the Republican nominee, retired Air Force Colonel Monique Despain, is taking on incumbent Val Hoyle, the Democrat, who has, to say the least, a few problems. She has been under federal investigation by the Department of Justice, which she insists she would know if she were, but she is, because it's very simple. She did favors for a corrupt marijuana company that is itself under federal investigation called LaModa. And LaModa is the company that had hired Shemia Fagan, our now ex-Secretary of State, resigned in disgrace, who is also under federal investigation. And so Val Hoyle, back in late January, had all of her communications with the Bureau of Labor and Industry subpoenaed regarding the LaModa grant that was issued. It was an illegal grant of $500,000 so that they could have 4 interns, one of which was actually an executive director paid $90,000. And it was illegal because you can't use federal money to give grants to a cannabis company, because under federal law, it is still illegal and to buy and sell cannabis. So, but Val Hoyle was identified in multiple media reports as the primary driver of this, the ringleader who strong-armed a grant all the way through the process at the Bureau of Labor and Industry when she was there. And then after forcing that through and actually coaching LaModa to take the grant, she proceeded to run for Congress. She received donations, which she says she later returned. We're not sure that she did in its entirety, because one of the donations we've never heard was returned. But she then spent 11 months pretending like she didn't know she had to turn in her private cell phone records that she used to conduct public business, because then those become public records. And so sometime late in November of 2023, she did turn in some of those records that her lawyer said would be okay to turn in. And as it turns out, that was the day after Monique Despain announced that she was running for Congress. That race has turned into one of the top challenger races in the country. There's only 28 such races in the country that are on the scope. Out of 435 congressional races, there's just 28 of them, and this is one of them. And so this past week was eventful because there were two forums, one in Coos Bay, the Bay Area Chamber of Commerce, which is North Bend and Coos Bay in Coos County. And then there's the Eugene, the City Club of Eugene, that held a raucous, wild, kind of unruly forum at the WOW Forum, the WOW Center in Eugene. And that one included all four candidates because there's a Libertarian and a Pacific Green candidate. Pacific Green candidate, his top issue is he wants to free Gaza, and he says he wants a ceasefire there, and he is convinced that Val Hoyle has entirely failed to stand by the people that he represents. So therefore, he's running against her. And then Dan Balin is a Libertarian candidate. He's kind of all over the place, but he had some interesting stuff to say. I would say it was humorous, the things that he said. But really, the debate was between Val Hoyle, who sat there and kind of insisted on that she's doing a great job and bringing money to the district, even though she's got this scandal. And she's spending all her money on telling $1 million of lies about Monique Despain, who stood up and said that Val Hoyle has failed the district. And besides being a liar, has spent the last 2 years voting against America in the 4th District, especially because she favors having an open border. And so it's been a fascinating week in that race. And I will post a couple of the stories here that you can try to follow what's going on. There's more information that you can find certainly on Monique Despain's website. I wouldn't recommend Val Hoyle's website. It's basically just a rehash of what she did in 2022. So Val Hoyle's only and main and only issue is abortion. She basically says that in a state where abortion's already enshrined in state law, that we actually have to pass a federal law. Monique Despain says it's a state issue, and she's not going to allow the federal government to intervene in the issue and leave Oregon's laws alone. But Val Hoyle has spent $1 million lying about that. And so it was a really interesting debate from the perspective and of who said what and what they did. And you can actually watch this on YouTube as well. It's available there because it was live streamed, and so you can watch it in its entirety if you'd like. But I also recommend that you read maybe some of these articles that talk about what happened. And here's the Eugene Register-Guard, which has actually had decent coverage, believe it or not, of several of these things. And this race is pivotal. There's several races in Oregon, and that really are potentially close. There's the 6th district. There's Mike Erickson versus Andreas Salinas. There hasn't been as much activity there. There's been no debates. There hasn't been as much TV advertising activity, and there hasn't been as much engagement from the national level from what we can see. But there was a poll that said it was close, so maybe it's close. We'll have to see. By the way, you could, let's see here. Let me see if I can post the information about, here we go. There was a report also about what took place in Coos Bay, where I just have to say, this is my personal opinion. I'm not unbiased, but I think there were a lot of people that found it very refreshing to have a sitting congresswoman held to account, and by some accounts, taken to the cleaners by Monique Despain. And so you can watch the report I just posted there and get a pretty good idea of that. And then here's some more news items that I can post. So this is the local television coverage of what took place at that City Club forum. Let's see here. There's an Oregon Capital Chronicle article, which I think actually is the same as the Oregon Live article I just posted. There's just a ton happening in this. And here's an article about what took place at the in Coos Bay, and you can read that. And, you know, these races are going to determine who controls the House of Representatives, which right now the Senate at the national level looks very much like it's going to go to Republicans. It's kind of math. There's a race in Montana, which looks like it's very likely to go to the Republican, but it's still, you know, it's held by a Democrat now. And then there's also in West Virginia, because of the retiring of Joe Manchin, who's effectively a independent / Democrat, but caucuses the Democrats. He'll be replaced for sure by the Republican governor who's running for Senate. And that'll shift 2 seats in the direction of Republicans, which will give them a majority. And then there's other seats that are in play too, such as in Ohio and elsewhere, that could add to that Republican lead. There's the presidential race. Really can't make any predictions right now. The latest news is that it's very hard to trust the polling, any polling. Almost all of the polling seems to be skewed. I can tell you that most people don't want to, when they're supporting Donald Trump, they don't want to tell a pollster. That's been a problem for getting accuracy in the polls. But from what I'm seeing, because Donald Trump tends to outperform the polls anyway, that he is most likely ahead in these states where it appears that they're dead even swing states. And then there's other indicators that I could give you as well that also talk about, you know, the likelihood that he's ahead in a lot of these races in the different states. So I think right now it's likely that the presidential race favors Donald Trump. But, you know, the presidential race, I can say one thing for sure. It's not going to be determined in Oregon. Our state is not likely to weigh in heavily on what happens in the presidential race. But here's an article from Just the News from Friday. I don't know if Sunny covered it, but it says some pollsters have pointed to the apparent disconnect between state and national level surveys. The national ones show Kamala Harris ahead by several points, but those are irrelevant because we have an electoral college system which makes it so that small states can't just be outvoted by big states and then ignored. And therefore, Kamala Harris is benefiting from maybe running up the numbers in California and New York and Illinois, but not doing so well in many of the swing states, which means that she'll lose the electoral college. Now, again, the polling is just hard to follow right now because it seems to be all over the place. But that's why I think you want to think of what's the national picture here. There's the presidential race that you can't change in Oregon. There's the U.S. Senate race that you can't change in Oregon. Senate's likely to go Republican. I'm just going to say for now, the presidential race looks like it's tilting towards Donald Trump. But the House of Representatives is completely up in the air and maybe even tilting towards Democrats nationally because there's 435 races. However, out of those 435 races, there's less than 30 that are truly competitive at all. And those races are where all the resources are going and where all the attention is going. And that's why I wanted to mention the District 4. If you're in District 4, you have to do something to make sure that that race goes to the right direction, Monique Despain. If you're elsewhere in Oregon, or if you want to tip the balance nationally, then you need to maybe consider donating to her race, because it's an air war. And when somebody spends $1 million lying about you, and you have to respond, because a lot of people, unfortunately, and I've seen it and heard it with my own eyes and ears, that it's pretty amazing, but people will actually trust a message that's given to them that's deceptively edited, that makes associations which are false associations, and repeats it over and over, but uses the techniques that TV commercials use all the time to sound credible, even though the TV ad is from the opponent, and that they'll believe it. So then they need to receive a message that tells them the truth. And there is an ad from Monique Despain where she looks directly to camera and tells the truth. And so to keep that air war alive and going all the way to the end, it's essentially the jet fuel for this jet fighter down there in the 4th district is you got to donate money. And that's how you can make a difference. You can tell friends and neighbors that are down there that they got to vote for, and tell her why. And you can go to MoniqueForCongress.com and read about it in plenty of detail there for anybody who has questions. But it really is important to make sure that that message reaches people there. In fact, I know right now Monique is out knocking doors as the light dwindles towards the evening, and the sun goes down sooner, but she's still out there actually surprising people that she's knocking doors. So that's the story in the 4th district. The 5th district is considered a complete coin toss district nationally. And it's an issue because there's literally tens of millions of dollars heading into that district right now. It's a Portland metro area district, so it's very expensive to advertise. The 4th district is not. That's why a smaller amount of money can make a difference there. But in the 5th district, Lori Chavez Dreamer is defending a Republican seat, which she must do if you want to be sure that Republicans have a chance of controlling the House of Representatives. And just think what of a difference that's made the last 2 years. We wouldn't actually even have hearings or be able to get to the truth of anything. And we wouldn't be able to have stopped any of the bad legislation that's going on. So, and we wouldn't be able to pass some of the good legislation that right now is sitting in the Senate waiting for Chuck Schumer to move it, which he won't. He's got over a dozen appropriation bills sitting there that he refuses to pass. There's a bill to secure the border called H.R. 2, Secure the Border Act, which would have put into law the stuff that President Trump had done that actually had dramatically reduced the inflow of migrants across the border, not to mention criminals and terrorists, and fentanyl. He had put those things into place, but they were by executive order. It would have made those the law. Democrats didn't support it. Republicans did. It went to the Senate, and there it sits. The so-called bipartisan border bill was not a border bill at all. It was an attempt to legalize the influx of 1.825 million, or 5,000 a day, migrants coming across the border like they are now, but just make it so that we pay for it and expedite it. It was not going to secure the border. It was going to throw money at sending more agents there, but it would refuse to do what H.R. 2 would do, which is complete the border wall, put up all the security equipment, which has already been bought and sitting there. And it would have reinstituted the Remain in Mexico policy, which would have meant it would have ended catch and release. So catch and release is everything for what the people like Val Hoyle want to do. Well, that big battle is happening, and that's why the House of Representatives matters hugely. Plus, that's where every tax and spending bill starts. You can have a mere 1-seat majority and still control the House of Representatives like a dictatorship. It's difficult, but as you can see for Republicans, but it is being 1 seat in the minority is literally close to zero power. And it's also, if President Trump is successful in winning the general election, then the House of Representatives, if it's in Democrat hands, will just stop all of the agenda, stop from fixing everything, and just investigate and impeach him all the time, which is what they did between 2019 and 2020. So if you want to stop that from repeating itself, then we need to step it up. So there's some good. There's an ad battle going on in the 5th district, and Janelle Bynum is the Democrat trying to take the seat. She has the backing of Hakeem Jeffries, the guy who wants to be the Speaker of the House, to succeed Nancy Pelosi. And that's a huge, huge battle that's happening right now. That is one where you got to pitch in too. You got to make a difference. It's a real race with real resources, national and local. And again, holding that seat is critical to holding on to the House of Representatives. Winning the 4th district is also critical, and every seat counts. And some people say, well, I'm not in that district. Well, if you're in the United States of America, or you care what happens in the United States of America, then this matters. And this is where you can make a difference. This is how Oregon will impact the national picture. It would be nice if we could win enough seats to take the state house and the state Senate back. Projections right now don't show that that is a strong possibility. We're trying to make sure that at least we don't fall into the super minority. There is a very important attorney general's race. Will Lathrop is running against Dan Rayfield, who is a standard progressive Democrat who is now trying to sound like a moderate temporarily to get elected. But he's got a tough opponent in Will Lathrop, who's running TV ads as well. So that's the state of play in the state. And I hope I brought you up to speed. At least I tried as quickly as I could. By the way, there was also, I'm going to post a few more things. There's a lot of news out of the 4th district. And here's another one that is about an interview that took place back-to-back, Val Hoyle and Monique Despain. Here is, let's see. Yeah, I think those are the ones that you want to get. Let me go back to, because I did post something about the closeness of the polls with President Trump, which I thought was very interesting. Yeah, apparently the betting markets, by the way, are going from where they were 3 weeks ago favoring Harris. The betting markets are now favoring Trump. And it looks like Senate races are beginning to shift towards Republicans in the campaign's final stretch around the country, including Ohio. And there's a ton of money being spent there. This is shocking. Bill Clinton said, if the border had been properly vetted, Laken Riley wouldn't have died. You know also how you could have prevented Laken Riley from dying? Passed the Laken Riley Act before she died. You know? I'm going to make sure that I get that one to Monique because she's following stories like this, and it's pretty amazing because there are several Democrats, Val Hoyle included, who voted against the bill to deport illegal aliens who attack police, attack law enforcement, illegal aliens who sexually assault and rape women, deport, be ineligible for return. And it is quite amazing to hear Bill Clinton say this. This is the morphing that they do around election time to get everybody to maybe believe that they're not as bad as they've been. I don't think it's going to work. I don't think it's going to work. I think it's going to be very tough because at this point, people have gotten used to seeing all of this nonsense play out. And so much of what's happening in our country is easily attributable to one source only. And that is the people who've been running the federal government and the Senate in particular for the last 2 years. So this is quite something that they are trying to defraud people, but that's what they do. They fake it until they try to make it, and as shocking as that is, it's how they roll. I'm sorry to say. By the way, I know he's blaming it on Trump, which what's insane is there were actually good, solid reasons not to vote for that Senate bill. That's why it died. It died in the Democrat-controlled U.S. Senate. And they are so insistent that they think that President Trump could just control everything. And it's complete nonsense. He doesn't have a vote in the Senate. He's not the president. The person who signed all the executive orders to produce the situation that we now have is the president. And with one swipe of his pen, he could have actually reinstituted all that stuff and put a stop to it, just like it was prior to January of 2021. So, this is a mess, but it's a mess that's been created really quite intentionally by the people that are running the country and the people that have enabled it and refused to put a stop to it when they had the chance. So anyway, I hope I've given you a good overview of what's happening in Oregon, what's at stake nationally, and how Oregon can affect that, because this is really important. Now, even Portland seems to be pushing back on these progressive policies. We are seeing more and more of this. There's a pushback via the various races that have taken place. First, we got Mike Schmidt. The Schmidt show is going to end. He was defeated in May by Nathan Vasquez. And so we're going to have a new pro-law enforcement district attorney. But there's a mayor's race. And in that mayor's race, there's like a zillion people running. It's going to be a ranked choice vote. So honestly, it's really hard to say what that ballot's going to look like. But, and it's going to be hard to say what the makeup of the city council is because they've expanded it to 12 seats. And it's going to be ranked choice voting, multi-member districts, which is, we've talked about on this program before. It's just a complete mess. Somebody with less than 20% of the vote could easily get on the city council. That's enough votes to elect almost any Antifa candidate. However, the mayor's race is still kind of a wide open thing that despite having ranked choice voting, I think there's an odds-on favorite, Rene Gonzalez, who's a current member of the city council. And here's what he said. He said, I didn't move to Portland because it was weird. I moved to Portland because it was livable. And there was a time when it was known for its livability. They used to brag about it. They said, let's keep it weird, but it was livable. And it's pretty obvious now that after the BLM stuff in 2020, followed by the open border, the fentanyl, the Measure 110, the open drug use, the massive homelessness that really resulted from that, and then of course the political violence on top of it, and the crime that has been driven by it. There is a lot going on, but I think there's a chance that this could turn into a reversal, that Rene Gonzalez could win. And, for a long time, the political rhetoric, he said, in the city of Portland was incredibly ideological driven. Things got so bad, politicians that politicians could tell the truth, I could be a 100% honest and couldn't be guilted into saying things different than what I was saying, but they would attack you as if you were an evil person and should be told to shut up. So there's some uncertainty about because of the voting system, but there is clearly a change of heart in what's happening there. And then there's some other interesting stories that relate to what's happening in Portland. A Portland mayoral candidate, Keith Wilson, not one of the top front runners, but he's running. He's running on a platform of ending unsheltered homelessness. Or no, is that? Oh, he'd be canvassing with Mark Johnston. Yeah. So, but he got bitten by a dog, which he dubbed it, quote, a little rough, RUFF encounter on the campaign trail. Everybody knows that candidates sometimes get bitten by dogs. The headline you don't want is candidate bites dog. That's different. That doesn't work. That actually doesn't help your prospects. Anyway, here's a fascinating headline to peruse. It's in Clackamas. A Clackamas man who beheaded his mother has been released from the state mental hospital and sent to a community treatment center. He had beheaded his mother and then went to the grocery store with the head and stabbed a store employee in a grisly rampage that even Oregon has rarely seen. And apparently he was watching videos on YouTube about serial killers and kind of got berserko. Probably already was berserko, but yeah, he's been released from the state mental hospital on his own recognizance, looks like. And this is stunning because this is like literally playing roulette with society. And this isn't the only place this has happened. Now let's see here. I know that I saw, oh, here we go. Oregon schizophrenic set free after found to be unfit for trial. So the schizophrenic accused of opening fire on 3 people before and during a 30-hour standoff with Washington County Police went free last month after a judge openly criticized the Oregon State Hospital method of preparing mentally unfit defendants for trial. So this is a guy who obviously schizophrenic, started firing at people, eventually was arrested, sent to the Oregon State Hospital, was there for 18 months, and then they decided to let him go. So it says 117 defendants have been released this year. Article goes into some more detail. So this is just not going to work out very well. It's just not. Here's the, I mean, they say they want to have gun laws, and we do have red flag laws here. So what is a schizophrenic doing with a gun, firing at people and then getting let out of jail? That's a great question, isn't it? Well, it just shows you that there's something broken about the system that goes deeper. Speaking of broken systems, the Oregon DMV review of erroneous voter registration, it found 1,561 non-citizens on the rolls and caused Governor Tina Kotek to be shamed into halting automatic voter registration. And by the way, very important, tomorrow is the deadline to register to vote for this election. If you are not registered at all, you must register by 11:59 p.m. tomorrow. You'll probably, if you do not have a state driver's license or voter ID, state driver's license or state ID, then you might need to go and register in paper form, and you might actually want to turn it in just to make sure it's received in time. you might want to turn it into the elections office directly. Otherwise, you're out of luck. It doesn't matter which party you are to vote in this election if you're already registered to vote. It does matter that you reactivate your voter registration if you've moved, and because they do not forward ballots. That's against the law to forward a ballot. So your mail forwarding won't catch that. But if you do register and update your voter registration address, you will be sent a ballot. There could be a little delay, but you'll be sent one. Best thing of all would be to go to the elections office and just get it. So you can actually do that all the way to 8 p.m. on election day and still get a ballot. But it won't be mailed to you if you've moved and haven't updated that information. So anyway, you can go to oregonvotes.gov/myvote and you can get all the details. Here's an article about it. And then I mentioned oregonvotes.gov. Let me see if I can copy the link here. Send this straight to people and tell them, go check it out. Make sure that your registration is correct if you want to do that too. And if you have your driver's license handy, that's the fastest way to get in there and check all that out. But they've paused automatic voter registration because apparently the system did not account for this. Now, tomorrow night with Ed Deal, we're going to talk about this issue a lot more. So I won't go into a lot of detail about it today because we're talking about other states too, which are having this problem on a much larger scale. And those are swing states like Arizona and Virginia, where they are deleting people from the rolls that don't have proof of citizenship. And there's people countersuing to try and prevent that. Let's see here. Another Portland story. Police got an ironic surprise after stopping two people driving a stolen vehicle in Southeast Portland Tuesday night. Officers originally stopped the driver and the passenger near Southeast Division and 162nd, then searched the car, reportedly finding cash, a loaded firearm, scales, a bag, which had definitely not a bag full of drugs printed on it. And they were both the driver and passenger were taken into custody. Carrying cash, a loaded firearm, and scales is pretty much the telltale sign that you are a drug dealer. And that is that. So apparently they are cleverly making bags that insist that they don't have drugs because somehow that will throw off the police. I don't know. I'd like to think that the police in Portland are more clever than that. I'm fairly certain that they are. Here's a Portland area story. Apparently, there are some free speech policies that have Willamette University students very concerned. They, on September 25th, about a month into the fall semester at Willamette University, the school sent out a notice to its students, faculty, and wider campus community. The university, with a main campus in Salem, invited public comment on 2 proposed policies: updated posting rules and a new campus demonstration policy. And the sophomore Sophie Gelfand said the proposals came as a shock to her and caused an immediate stir among her classmates and professors. The general sentiment right now is that we're disappointed in Willamette's administrations as a whole. And that's the president of the Willamette Students for a Democratic Society. We're disappointed because we were sold the idea that this is a place where we turn knowledge into action, and it's actively being discouraged. No idea what this means yet, as I skimmed through this article, but it does appear to have something to do with the war in Gaza, student-led protests. Some universities took a hard line in their policies, introduced some changes, but some students at Willamette believe the proposed rules have potential to stifle the First Amendment rights, which they didn't care about when it was conservatives, apparently. It apparently, among other things, It outlines the approval policy for hanging banners, posting flyers, and writing in chalk on sidewalks. The policy goes as far as limiting the size of posters, specifying the acceptable types of sidewalk chalk. It also governs where messages can be placed on campus. So far, I'm not hearing First Amendment, but anyway, it incorporates new university policies on property damage, harmful behavior, disruptive behavior. It lays out expectations for students in the university, including a 40-hour advance notice for all planned demonstrations and an obligation to obey federal, state, and local laws. But Gelfand here, the girl that was commenting, says it limits our ability to demonstrate. The point of protest is just disrupt. If we have to tell the university 48 hours before we do any kind of protest, that's not helpful. That goes against the nature of protests. I guess if you're trying to commit acts of destruction or cause the university to be unable to function, then yeah, I guess the university's not going to take it well. In May, students occupied a dozen students occupied two different buildings at the Mark Hatfield Library, and that's a stark difference from protests at other universities, including Portland State, in which students shut down classes, caused millions of dollars in property damage, and law enforcement clashed with protesters. So there's a battle going on. I guess progressives are rediscovering what free speech is, but they also have this idea that free speech includes destruction and interruption of the university in its proper functioning, and that the university should have no right to do anything about it, which is insane. Oregon millennial and Gen Z voters say homelessness is the top issue in a statewide poll here in Oregon. That is fascinating. 38% said homelessness is the top issue. The next highest was 16% for housing affordability, 12% for drugs addiction and mental health, 10% cost of living. Now, I don't know what this means regionally. Well, it does show actually regions further on down in the report. And it still is the top issue outside the Willamette Valley and the Portland metro area. A little bit less so for homelessness, but still pretty significant. And so, but homelessness, ironically enough, as we know, is driven by the addiction epidemic, which is different from the housing affordability and availability problem. And so what's driving it to the proportions that it is, and then leading to disruption and blighting of the society, crime, etc., is at this point fentanyl and meth. And fentanyl and meth are coming across the southern border of the United States. So this is directly, ultimately tied to border security. And as I mentioned, that's quite a different issue from immigration reform, which Democrats like to conflate together as if letting 650,000 people with criminal records that you catch at the border and then releasing in the United States is immigration. Excuse me, that's not immigration. Anyway, here's another consequence of the drug issue, Measure 110. A judge has rejected a preschool's request to halt the opening of a drug deflection center. There is the Escuela Viva Community School is attempting to halt the opening of a coordinated care pathway center, which is supposed to open this coming Monday at 7 a.m., right, I guess, near the preschool. Deflection centers, by the way, are this idea in Measure 110 that you can have people go to these centers and then kind of jawbone them into maybe getting some treatment while you give them Narcan and food and granola bars and water. In some parts of the state, it might be more serious. In Portland, it's decidedly not. And so now there's a legal battle because that's actually not going to be great for that preschool. Hope the preschool prevails, but on the other hand, I hope that they get serious about actually having people go into a real recovery program rather than these, easy come, easy go, keep doing drugs, no problem, keep doing crime, no problem. Deflection centers, which is what we are going to face here. So that's what Measure 110 Light is getting you. By the way, here's a really good article, and I want to share with you. Good old Boomer Wright. He is in Oregon's House District 9, which is spanning the coast from Coos Bay up to Yachats and east of Mableton and Triangle Lake. And he's a great state representative. And he said that the insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting different results. And he's talking about public education. We had terrible test scores. We're well below the performance that students had in Oregon of 2019, which wasn't so great nationally in 2019, but it's downright terrible now. And so check this out. He goes and he makes a distinction between policy and process. There's a disconnect between that and classroom practice and performance. Boomer Wright's a great guy. He's actually endorsed Monique to Spain, by the way. I happen to know that too. By the way, I saw somebody was it you, Nicholas, who was saying that they need a Monique to Spain? Oh, Pat Finley needs a Monique sign. They're hard to come by because they got all put out very early. But I can tell you, if you can contact the campaign. If you go to MoniqueForCongress.com, you can see the number there. There's also a shop where you can buy some of these things and have them shipped to you. I don't know if it'll get to you fast enough right now, but it's worth trying. And so I hope that answers your question. Here's a very interesting article. The Oregon Capitol Chronicle published a story called "Sharp Divide in Oregon Over Bill to Step Up Logging to Prevent Wildfires." And she makes it sound like a partisan bill by Republicans, saying Republicans are backing proposals to scale back environmental regulations to thin forest, while Democrats and environmentalists want to fund community preparedness, which is a kind way of saying they want to throw money at it and then prepare people so that when more fires come, maybe their community will survive, maybe not. The Fix Our Forests Act is what this is about. Now, she leaves out the fact that 55 Democrats, including Nancy Pelosi, actually voted for this. Shockingly, Oregon Democrats voted against it, including Val Hoyle, who has 2.3 million acres of forest land in her district. It's 86% forest land. Half of it is federal controlled land, federally mismanaged. And but the Fix Our Forests Act has passed the House of Representatives without her vote, but with 55 Democrats and all the Republicans. It passed on September 24th, and it's gone to the U.S. Senate. And we have to see now what our U.S. senators do, because this is to improve the health of forests, but also harvest some of the wood in the process of making them healthier, which is actually logical and reasonable, and also to establish special centers where they develop methodologies and actually actively intervene to prevent fires in the areas that are most likely to be affected, and it would also scale back on the ability to constantly file lawsuits to stop any of this from happening. So it's in the hands of the U.S. Senate, controlled by Democrats. It's hard to say how it'll proceed, but it is the most promising and transformative bill in decades. But the spin by the Oregon Capitol Chronicle is that it is actually Republicans just wanting to log, and Democrats want to do community preparedness. Really, all they want to do is throw money at the stuff. And they love throwing money, by the way, at firefighting, which is a huge, huge thing now. But it's the 100,000 tons of cure instead of the ounce of prevention. And it's a big issue in the 4th district race. As I mentioned, Val Hoyle voted against the bill. Monique Despain supports it. We could maybe put an end to the annual smoke season, because it's Monique likes to say it's winter, spring, summer, smoke, fall every year, and we're kind of getting tired of it. It's bad for your health. It's bad for the CO2 it releases into the air, if that is the top concern somebody has. So there you go. Well, I covered a lot of stories here today. I'm trying to see if there's anything I missed. There's some stuff that we might get to tomorrow instead. Oh, Portland liberals call for the abolishment of Israel. That's a banner they're putting out. So they want to abolish Israel, because that's pretty humane, abolishing Israel. When they say from the forest, from the river to the sea, they're talking about the Jordan River to the Mediterranean Sea, and just should be cleared of whoever's there, so that the Palestinian in Gaza can come and do whatever they want. So that's not genocide, apparently. But going and killing terrorists who tried to murder 1,200 of your citizens in a surprise attack, that's apparently genocide. So this is the debate that's going on. It's really a war with Iran. Everybody knows it, and it's a proxy war. But and it won't end until somebody deals with Iran. You know who's not going to deal with Iran? The current administration. And if any part of the current administration ends up continuing to serve, that part will also continue that policy. So it's really a problem. Really concerning, actually. And I think it's time that people get some common sense. Here's the best way to end the war in Gaza. Hamas surrenders, releases the hostages, war is over. That's it. It's done. No more war. Ceasefire. All good. Yeah. So they should propose to invite all Israel and then let Palestinians have them, but they won't agree. Current administration. I don't know. Current administration has been trying to impose ceasefires on Israel while Iran fires missiles at them. So, what kind of friend is that? If you want people to trust you, don't ask them to commit suicide, policy-wise, and literally in this case. Anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed the show tonight. I was glad to be back. Sorry that we've had to do so many repeat shows, but campaign time is really busy. And but we will be back tomorrow. We're going to do the show at 6:30 or slightly thereafter, as soon as Ed is available. And we will cover the measures, and we will give you guys something you can share with people. Plus, it's voter registration deadline tomorrow. We'll mention it again, and we will look forward to seeing you tomorrow night. Next episode of The Captive Audience.